Hey there, I'm Douglas Ferguson, and today I'm live with Rachel Connerly. Excited to have you with me today, Rachel.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. And we were just chatting about this notion of resonance, and as someone who grew up loving science and taking things apart and like just fascinated with physics, resonance is an interesting concept in itself. And then you apply it to one of my current fascinations and obsessions is meetings. You piqued my interest. And you mentioned there's some research behind this, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you've been reading and finding and thinking about as it relates to resonance in meetings.
Terrific. So, yeah, we were just chatting, and I was mentioning that the biologist Rupert Sheldrake talks about the morphic field or morphogenic resonance. And, my experience with this pertains to meetings. And it is simply this: we've got so much technology available to us. And the question for me nowadays is, are we going to resonate with each other, something human, or are we going to resonate with all this technology? And they do provide different morphic fields, and I believe they lead to different outcomes. One client, Douglas, that I'll just mention, the leadership team would walk in and they would have in their meetings, and they would have two phones, and one was their regular cell phone and the other was an emergency cell phone. And so you talk about a disruption in the force, a disruption of the morphic field, and this was really, really it. And so I began to talk to them about this, and slowly but surely they began to leave their phones with their admins. And so the admins knew to run and get them if it were critically important, as it sometimes could be in their situation. But we began to leave those outside, and in some cases go old school. Instead of being all digital, we'd get a little bit analog and start handwriting things. And yeah, it began to be their favorite meeting. So
It reminds me of this notion of conditioning, or even in science the observer phenomenon. When we start looking at something, we kind of influence the way it's happening. And so like how anything we bring into the environment, whether it's technology or even the way we arrange the chairs or what we put on the walls or how much sunlight is let in, that's all going to impact how people resonate in that moment.
yes, it is. And so then the question becomes, how do we create the conditions for a really terrific meeting? How do we design for really terrific meetings? And how do we even just kind of show up in ourselves for a really good meeting?
Mm. That's a man. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was one of the Theory U folks. It's not. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name now. But he had an amazing quote, which was like, "The outcome of any intervention is directly correlated to the internal conditions of the intervener."
Yeah.
Meaning, if you want people to resonate in some way, if you're not resonating in that way, it's going to be difficult to kind of foster that in the room.
Well, I think that's right. And that leads me to mention three other things that I've been thinking about with respect to meetings, beyond the obvious stuff where we need to design, we need ownership and alignment, we need a good meeting space. But one of my clients talked a lot about coherence.
Mm.
And it resonated with me. And when I asked her what it meant, she was the leader of this team. And she said, it all hangs together. The meeting hangs together. Things make sense. And I think that can be an issue of design. In other words, we can design for coherence by designing our meetings in a way that top down. So, we start with that strategic intent, and everything we do ensures that we're going to accomplish that. But then also the morphic resonance, I think that can have a lot to do with coherence. I think that first check-in question, when we're allowing people to go around the room and just kind of shift their mind and get present in this meeting. So that first check-in question can be one that really sets the tone and starts to engender coherence. And then the other thing is synergism. And synergism or synergistic effects have to do with 1 + 1 = 3. And I know people are so accustomed to meetings that, 1 + 1 = 1, like they're getting less than what they should even get, that sum total. And in terms of synergistic effects, I really think that has to do with collaboration and design. Again, really good design can create those important synergistic effects. But the thing I've been thinking about lately has to do with synchronicity, Douglas. And synchronicity is about, depending on how you define it, is about Chronos time, so our earthly time, and how it intersects divine time or magic time or godly time, or whatever you want to call it. And one of the ways that we can all impact synchronicity and create more of it, that is more magic in our meetings, is to bring an appropriate archetype into the room for that meeting. And so if you think about what you need in order to make this meeting work, whether you're just a participant or the facilitator, and you bring the appropriate archetype, whether it's like a king archetype, because we really need to rally the troops, or something else, could be something more playful, like a Hermes archetype, the trickster archetype. We all have access to these, and it greatly impacts the vibration in the room, the morphic resonance, and then our ability to do synchronistic work together. So what are your thoughts about that?
It conjures up quite a few things. It's a lot, very provocative, all of it. The first thing I thought about was just the need to think about the through line when we're designing, right? So quite often, I think the worst case that you see in most enterprises is, well, people don't do agendas, and then they hear that they need to do agendas, and the people that are doing agendas, they're just lists of topics. They're not thinking about the journey or experience. Yes. And then the next mistake is the lack of through line, which is that coherence you were talking about. Like, if we're not kind of connecting the dots in some way that like leads people through to some natural outcome that still provides some opportunity for emergence, which then gets to that this notion of the synergistic, right? If we don't have that, if we don't leave room for the emergence, then that can't flourish and happen. Yeah. And then your last point really reminded me of a conversation I had on my podcast with Jan de Visch. And he's been studying what he calls like thinking patterns, or like mindsets. And basically, if I was to marry the two things y'all are saying, is that if you've got half your room focused on a different thinking patterns, it's going to be really difficult for them to resonate together. Yeah. Because if someone's thinking hierarchy and someone else is thinking like, in some other pattern or mechanism, then it's going to be hard for them to see the world in a way that can be integrated. And so understanding those patterns and noticing those things can help like shift in the moment, right? Because it's like, oh, maybe we need two breakout groups because you're thinking this way and this way, or maybe half and half. Let's blend this up and just acknowledge it, name it. So I thought it was really fascinating, just how he had broken down this stuff, because it's not only about the conditions, that we set, but it's also how people are showing up, and are they in a place where it's going to be hard for them to resonate with each other.
Beautiful. Yeah. Let me jump back for a minute, because something you're saying about the kind of the timeline or the overall aspect of the meeting, and that makes me think about offsite meetings. And I think so often, Douglas, when we're planning offsite meetings, we've got that one meeting in focus. But to your point, there's everything that happens before the offsite. There's everything that happens at the offsite. And then there's everything that needs to happen afterward. And so one of the things that we try to persuade our clients of is that taking that whole timeline into focus is so useful, because so often we spend so much money and time and effort getting that offsite together. And then the stuff that needs to happen afterwards, which may actually be the most important stuff, it can get a little bit lost.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
that's what.
I think a great metaphor for what you're saying or talking about is to think about weddings.
Yes.
Like when my friend sends me their save the date card,
Yeah.
that's when their wedding starts in my mind.
Nice.
Right? That's the first time that I'm thinking about that exchange with that friend, and then and maybe it doesn't even end until they're showing me pictures of their honeymoon, right? Like,
Yeah.
so what's that whole journey that we're going on? Because it's not just that one afternoon on a Saturday, right? It's like, when do I first hear about it? How are those expectations set? What's even my journey to get there, and how have I been taken care of in that process, and what information have I been given? Do I even know where the hotels are, et cetera, right?
So good. Yes, one of my colleagues used the meeting technology to very successfully plan a destination wedding, which can be a little bit tricky. And so, just everything you're saying, yeah, we watched it all work out beautifully, and yeah, just for all the reasons that you're saying, it's an
That's really
overall.
cool. Amazing. So I'm really curious. So coming back to our word of the day, resonance, what's been resonating for you lately? Or what's been just like getting you
Yeah.
super excited?
Well, can I talk about what's difficult and where we triumph? So,
Sure, yeah.
yeah, so in our training, because meetings is a very small part of what we teach. I'm imagining we do like a survey course in meetings compared to what you all do, which might be some advanced PhD work in meetings. But in any case, people have been coming into the trainings discombobulated,
Mm,
disorganized, disruptive, all of these things, and how much effort it takes to kind of situate them and sort them back out. However, I have noticed a few heavyweights in the Zoom room. All right. And by heavyweights, I mean people who understand the morphic resonance. They tune up their brain before they come. They're listening to Bach, 23 tracks, and now they can track all the complexity, be present to one another, and makes all the difference. And so my new mantra is, you are not more disorganized, disorderly, unprepared, unruly than we are wonderful. And so just
mm.
a commitment that if we just stay the course, it's like, we're going to turn them around, and they are going to be present, and they're going to leave the training a different person and appreciative. So just
I
any.
think I think that is, the echoes of philosophy that I think is really important for facilitators to hold. And we often hear new budding facilitators want to learn how to deal with dysfunctional behavior, or just well, specifically disruptive people, or difficult people.
Yeah.
And so I think reframing it as dysfunctional behavior, or things that we don't appreciate as facilitators, is a more powerful lens, because it's unfortunate for us, right? But we have to maybe unpack why that is, right? Did they not get enough sleep? Did I not explain well enough why we're doing this thing? Are they unclear? Are they struggling? Are they having to give up some privilege, or give up, make a sacrifice of some sort that I don't even understand?
Beautiful.
What's the inner struggle that they're having? I'm just dealing with the consequences of, right? It doesn't necessarily mean they're a negative person. And so I love this sentiment around patience, and just like, we'll get there. It might be a little messy in the middle.
You're here. You're also making me think about a reframe that we help people do around conflict. And we teach them through the course of our training to see all conflict as misalignment. It's
Mm.
simply misalignment. And
Yep.
so, how is it that we can actually transform that state of misalignment to alignment? Because that's really what's being requested of us.
Yeah, I love that. It's like so often, I mean, whether there's dysfunction or not, I would say that's 90% of the job, right? It's like realizing that, wait a second, you think you're agreeing, but I'm pretty sure you're saying different things.
Mhm, mhm.
So good. Excellent. Well, we just over the 15-minute mark. These are meant to be really quick and fast. And wow, what a lovely conversation. I know we could go on for much longer. And we should talk about getting you on the podcast sometime, so we can have a longer conversation. But just want to say thanks for joining today, and love the way your brain works, and all the awesome work it sounds like you're doing.
Awesome. Yes, coming to you live from a farm in Appalachia.
Yeah, awesome.
It's a new thing. So, anyway, thank you, Douglas. It's been a pleasure.
For sure.
All right.
Bye, everyone.